There is no greater cruelty than the one with which the so-called Islamic State came to this world. For many, it's better known as ISIS, a terrorist organization that had the blood of thousands of brutally murdered people on its hands. This education more closely resembles a great grandeur, in which they spare no one from the infidels. They consider that all who do not obey their leader are the infidels. How did this cruel creature called the Islamic State come into being? The roots go far back to the past, in the 7th century of our era, when Islam appeared in the world. But we will start with more recent events: the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. Subsequent occupation and war became an honest nest for future jihadists. They fought and raised its ideology of those people, which later became the leaders of radical Islamist groups. After the Soviet Union withdrew its troops from Afghanistan in 1998, Al-Qaida was already known as a brutal terrorist organization. In the same Afghanistan, the creator of the Islamic State enters the arena, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. When he met Al-Qaeda leaders Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri, they were not thrilled by him. Quite the contrary, the fanaticism and cruelty of his world pushed even the leaders of Al-Qaeda. But the young fanatic continued to build his own plan. Meanwhile, we come to the events that took place in Iraq. In 2003, an international coalition led by the United States enters Baghdad, there to overthrow the government of the local dictator Saddam Hussein. The then President of America, George Bush, said that Hussein was associated with Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. After all, they found Saddam and after a 3-year trial sentenced him to hanging. This is a very important moment. They played a crucial role in the creation of Islamic State. If during Hussein the main posts in the country were occupied by Sunnis, after the death of the dictator came to power Shiite Muslims. The Sunnis did not agree with this situation. Moreover, the Shiite Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki was not the most humane policy, in every way humiliating the Sunni part of the population. Practically in exile, there were also those politicians and military who worked during the Saddam Hussein regime. This scenario has provided fertile ground for the implementation of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi plans. In this Iraqi chaos, he creates the body of monotheism and jihad. The first name is ISIS. This alliance was joined by disgruntled Sunni nationalists and representatives of the former Iraqi authorities. They immediately claimed responsibility for many brutal terrorist attacks. Al-Zarqawi swore on oath to the leader of Al-Qaeda. Despite the fact that he was so unsuccessfully eliminated, he managed to appear followers. The militants declared the creation of the Islamic State of Iraq. In 2010, their leader became the Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Islamists urgently needed a new hotbed of military conflict, in which they would again feel like a fish in the water. In 2011, the civil war in Syria began. Initially, there was no Islamic State in the Syrian arena. There appeared a newborn terrorist organization, Al-Nusra Front, which declared itself the wing of Al-Qaeda. The leader of the Islamic State watched their actions for several years. Then he was tired of their independence, and he said that he took the group of Al-Nusra under his wing. Immediately, he announced the new name of his organization, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. That is ISIS, which we'll all know it today. One means the aberration of the Levant. In a narrow sense, it's Syria, but now within the framework of a modern country, but rather wider beyond its borders. In fact, this concept refers to the entire Middle East. The brutality of ISIS has surprised even the leaders of Al-Qaeda. They later believed that the brutal killings, which the Islamic State also filmed, will alienate Muslims. As a result, Al-Qaeda disowned ISIS. It was a chance. Now the young Islamists were able to act independently, carrying out their goals. And their goals are quite global. ISIS dreams of restoring the Islamic Empire to its original form. the creation of the so-called caliphate, and later spread it around the world. The own ideology they have to the Egyptian thinker of the 20th century, Sayyid Qutb. In his teachings, he wrote that war against the West and its Muslim allies is not only obligatory, but also sacred. This is the only way the Islamic world can wash away its sins. His teaching was a call to kill infidels, and not just to kill, and to destroy with all cruelty. The thinker assured that it was pleasing to Allah. According to the ideology of this Egyptian, is not only ISIS. For example, during the investigation of the terrorist attack on September 11 in the United States, Al-Qaida found exact adherence to the teachings of Sayyid Qutb. In 2014, after the Islamic State seized part of Syria, the terrorists moved to Iraq. They occupied several large cities. They were polite to the locals, but after a while, the Islamists began to cut people by hundreds, all whom they considered infidels.
قام حرقني يعني بالجقارة طفاه يعني على كتفي وبطني يعني بأطراف رجلي وهيجي ليه ما يعني ما صار عندي قوة إنه يعني حتى أحكي فاغتصبني. ولا أنا بس كنت أفكر بأمي.
Along with the occupation of Iraq, the Islamic State is carrying out terrorist attacks around the world, detonates explosives in cars in Baghdad, takes hostages in Paris and Syrian churches, arranged terrorist attacks in Tunisia, Kuwait, Turkey, shooting down a Russian passenger plane over the Sinai Peninsula, common massacres in Brussels and Orlando, blowing up airports. Despite all the brutality with which the Islamic State operates, its existence is beneficial to some characters in the global political arena. For example, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. His main enemy is the Syrian opposition. His goal is to destroy them, and if this requires the presence of ISIS in the country. Officially, all countries oppose the Islamic State, but in fact, many countries provide financial support. Thus, it's advantageous for Turkey that the terrorists destroy the Syrian Kurds, which they do in particular. For Saudi Arabia, there are benefits from weakening its neighbors, so there is information that Riyadh is also feeding Islamist killers. But Jordan buys cheap oil from ISIS, thereby also increasing their strength and power. Here you can find a trace of the Russian Federation. The ranks of the fighters of the Islamic State are actively replenished by Russian citizens. And again the questions about gas and oil. It's important for Moscow to remain a mere exporter in this area because the share of Russia's revenues from the sale of oil and gas reach almost 15%. ISIS helps in this matter, directly or indirectly.
لماذا تقتل الكفار؟ لماذا تقتل الكفار؟ يعني هم يقتلوا المسلمين. كل الكفار. مثل كفار أوروبا.
The Islamic State largely consists of young people. The young people are encouraged by the religious ideas of ISIS. They want to be involved in the revival of the caliphate. After all, terrorists are actively using propaganda to attack young people. They instill in them the idea that participation in the Islamic State is something heroic and victorious. In adolescence, almost all people are in prostration. They do not understand where to move on, what is the meaning of life. And if in this state a person falls under the influence of ISIS, then he will not have to be persuaded for a long time. They give him a specific answer. What's the point of life, boy? Kill savagely for Allah. And the guy goes to the hotbed of terrorism and finds in this its vocation of. And the fact that murderers use it for the dirty purposes, you cannot prove it to him.
تسعة.
أنت مع من تقاتل؟
الدولة الإسلامية.
بعد رمضان وين بدك تروح؟
أنا عسكر.
ليش؟
عشان أتدرب.
تدرب على شنو؟
على الروسية.
وش تسوي بعدين؟
مشان بس أحصل فقط أمريكا.
انت صغير تقدر تشيل بارودة؟ تعرف تضرب بالبارودة؟ ضربت قبل بالبارودة؟
The end of 2018, the US President Donald Trump said that withdraws US troops from Syria. According to him, Washington's goal is fulfilled. ISIS is destroyed. In principle, the forces of the Islamic State have indeed suffered heavy losses in recent years. Here and there, ISIS is still claiming responsibility for the terrorist attacks. And also, the regional form of this organization is crushed. During this time, the Islamist militants managed to disperse around the world. And the idea did not go out. It's just littered with ash.